Hi guys, hope you're well. So difficult times for people at the moment, but we're trying to put up a few interviews that may cheer you up or get some interest for you. This one is with Nick Reynolds. This is part of the succession of interviews that Brendan and I did just before Brendan left Camelot. And this is Nick Reynolds talking about Dave Courtney. He's talking about the trip to Rio to see Ronnie Biggs. He's talking about Peter Mandelson. He's talking about loads of stuff, the Great Train Robbery and One Who Got Away. So fascinating stuff in this first part of this interview with Nick Reynolds, the son of Great Train robber Bruce Reynolds. Hi folks, I'm here with Brendan, and tell us who you've got here today.
I've got the legend, that is Nick Reynolds.
He is a legend, isn't he?
Pure legend, this man here.
Legend.
A very talented man.
Yeah, artist.
Music artist.
Yes.
Sculpture, artist, anything. Nick can turn his hand to it, he can have a go at it.
And he's been around the chaps for many years, and of course his dad is, of course.
His dad is Sir Bruce Reynolds.
Absolutely. So what do you want to ask him, Brendan?
Well, Nick has known Dave for a good, 30 years, is it, Nick? 25 years?
First time I was aware of him, I was with my old man watching Ronnie Kray's funeral. And my dad had decided, obviously he was invited because they'd grown up. They was in Borstal together, you know, my dad and Ronnie and Reggie, they went back a long time. But my dad decided to opt out because he didn't really want to be associated. You know, my dad was a thief, not a gangster.
Yeah.
So obviously I wanted to go, you know, let's go, Dad, let's go, you know, because I knew that my dad would get lauded up and everything like that, and you know, I enjoyed seeing it. But he declined. He decided not to, and he thought, no, this is all about, you know, Ron, and I don't want to be there looking like, you know, it's just another press opportunity kind of thing. So we were watching it on the telly, and that's when the first time I saw or heard who Dave was, because obviously he was involved with the organising of the security of it, you know. And I remember saying to my dad, who's that bloke who's running around and the camera keeps panning on him, and he had this nice coat on, you know. And my dad goes, I don't know, I haven't got the faintest. But anyway, it was seeing that funeral. That was actually the biggest public turnout for a funeral since Winston Churchill.
That's right, that's correct.
Believe it or not, you know. And I was shocked. Obviously, I knew Ronnie Cray was growing up within the sort of bounds of the criminal fraternity, but I didn't think the general public really knew or gave a shit, to be honest. So once I realised there's a massive fascination for criminals, that's when I kind of had this idea to do this exhibition. And I was going to call it Heroes and Villains originally, but then there was like this kind of media crime wave phenomena, and Lenny McLean,
Lenny McLean at the time.
Yeah, Gangster Chic just popped out of nowhere in the mid-90s. Lenny McLean wrote his book, The Governor, which became a #1 bestseller. And then at that time, various sort of well-known 60s villains had started writing their memoirs, and they were like the next new rock stars. And then there was that film Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels,
which Dave spent 2 years with Guy Ritchie organising.
So while all this was going on, and my idea of doing this Heroes and Villains was to cast famous criminals' heads, you know, people that had become household names through the media. So I said to my dad, give me a list of like 9 of the most, you know, still living, most infamous villains that you could think of. And so it was in the process of doing that I got asked to go on Nicky Campbell's show. And I met Dave there, and he came up to me, and I think the subject was, you know, should villains be kind of glorified in the media? And the whole point of my exhibition was this kind of paradox, how people that have been sort of, if you like, vilified by the media on one hand, were then suddenly fated on the celebrity circuit, you know. Yeah. And there was Dave, and he said, I heard about your exhibition, you're doing these moulds of these famous criminals. I want to be in it. And I went, well, who are you? You know? And he went, well, you know, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so. And I went, yeah, well, it doesn't really kind of, you know, that's not really what the criteria is for what I'm doing, you know, and he says, I'll pay you. And I said, nah, sorry, mate. You know, you got, the whole point is you got to be a household name, you got to have books, you got to be sort of like being exploited by the media, which is most of these villains have.
At that time, I suppose he was just starting his journey.
He was just starting, yeah. Then I was, because I had a place out in Tobago at the time, and I remember guest houses, and I had to get a couple of guest houses. So I remember going out there, and a guest had left some magazine. I think it could have been like The Observer or something like that, and he was on the front page of it, and it said villain, and it was a really good photo. And I thought, oh, hold on a minute, I remember that guy, you know. And I started kind of looking through it, and it said some of what he was doing, and with the security, and he's known as the Yellow Pages of crime and stuff. And I thought, well, you know, he's building up a bit of a profile. And I was out there for about 3 months, and then when I come back, a friend of mine who works for Virgin rang me up and said, you know, by the way, that guy, you know, they've just given him an absolutely huge amount of money as an advance. And that was for his book, Stop the Ride, I Want to Get Off, which was a phenomenal success. And in fact, you know, for a guy who was dyslexic and wasn't very good at writing, he actually kept the publishing arm of Virgin afloat.
He did, single-handedly.
Single-handedly, you know, which is a remarkable feat, considering, you know, and they were good books. They were really, really funny. And so that was it. So once he was, you know, once the books were there, and of course the books were serialised, so he's in all the papers, and they've nicked the juicy bits. Like the bit with being attacked, you know, with the sword and the Chinese waiters and all of that. So that's when I thought, right, okay, well that's it. He fits the bill now. You know, there's a film about him, i.e. in the Vinnie Jones. That was my criteria. That to be like a mainstream or a cult movie that about you or someone playing you. And you had to have books about you, and that's what the thing was about. Cons to icons. So he you know, he'd hit the criteria as far as I was concerned. But some of the other villains that I got in the exhibition weren't too happy. Like Frank Fraser straight away said, so I'd already done Frank. I did him in a straitjacket, and you know, sculpture of him in a straitjacket. And when he heard out I was putting Dave in it, he said, I don't want to be in the exhibition if he's going to be in it. Can you take him out? And I said, well, no, you know. And he said, but I haven't heard of him. He wasn't out there with us. He's only X amount of 8 years old, you know. And I said, it's not about that. It's not about who has done the most bird, who's done the most amount of robberies. It's like who, when you say villain, is in the mind of the public as created by the media. And I said, that's really what I'm doing. And anyway, so, you know, I fell out with Frank. He didn't come to the exhibition. I didn't take him out. But Dave, being Dave, you know, because he's a one-man press agent, that was all over the papers. You know, son of Great Train Robber falls out with Mad Frankie Fraser over exhibition, you know. So then I realised that between the pair of us, that we could actually kind of really hype the show up, and,
and it did work, didn't it?
And it did, and we kind of bounced off each other in that way. And of course, Dave being Dave said, "Why are all the eyes closed?" And I said, "Well, that's the kind of the whole point." I said, "Is, you know, it's almost as if like you're sleeping. They're kind of like a death mask." He goes, "Well, I want mine with the eyes open."
Right. He wanted eyes.
And I said, "Well." I said, you're going to have to pay for the eyes. I said, he says, you know, I told him to go to where the Madame Tussauds, they get a person, he had to drive hundreds of miles. I think they cost him 300 quid to get the right ones that matched him, you know. But I thought, typical Dave, you know. He's the one who had his eyes open. But I had two heads of him in the exhibition, one with the eyes closed, one with the eyes open. And what's quite interesting is the one that had the eyes closed, people would look up really close at the detail, but the one of him that had the eyes open, it was like they didn't want to get too close to it, you know, which I was fascinated by.
Wow, the eyes really sort of made them sit back a little bit.
Yeah, and so people kind of get close and then didn't want to get too close.
But what was he like having the cast done? Because it's not a pleasant experience, is it?
Well, it's quite funny, and this only happened to me once before. He turned up, it was being filmed for some TV show. I forget what the show was.
I think it was one of the documentaries he was doing at the time.
Was it one of his ones? Yeah, I can't remember if it was a documentary about me or might have been one of his. I mean, this is typical Dave. I mean, I don't know how he managed to do it. He had two major networks both doing an exclusive documentary on him without being aware of the other
one
having an exclusive.
I remember him doing that.
I don't know how he got away with that.
Well, what he used to do was book this lot. He had ITV and he had Channel 4. And they were going, you haven't got nothing. He'd go, no, there's no one else doing it. So on each thing that he was going to do, he'd only tell the ITV group for certain ones, and then he'd tell Channel 4 for the other ones. And the only time it all went wrong is because when he went to court, that's when it went wrong.
That's when it come out.
That's when both of them went, hang on, we're doing an exclusive. And they went, no, we're doing an exclusive.
But he was lucky he didn't get sued. I mean, I don't know how that...
Well, the reason he didn't get sued, I think, is because both of them realised they both got a good documentary.
Yeah.
But they've done it slightly different.
Yeah, no, they were different.
ITV was a bit serious.
Angles.
Yeah, and the Channel 4 Dave Courtney's Underworld one was a bit more tongue-in-cheek. Do you know what I mean? It was a bit more relaxed,
jokey.
A bit more jokey, but the other one was quite serious with Ian Edmondson in it.
Right, well, but whichever one it was in my studio. I cast him, and I had my psychiatrist couch thing that I used to cast people on. And I remember he was sat on there, and it was all cameraed up, and he brought in a couple of geezers to kind of stand there like that, keep an eye in case. I think he was worried that once once he was covered in the plaster and he couldn't see that we take the piss and do all sorts of silly nonsense, you know.
Yeah.
You know. So he had these two guys stood there like that, you know. But the thing is I didn't put any Vaseline on his chest, and he had quite a hairy chest then. And when I come to take the whole lot off, I ripped all of the hair out of his chest, and he said at the time, he was like, oh, he went, fuck me, he goes, I've been stabbed and I've been shot, and he went, it didn't hurt anywhere near as bad as that, like pulling the hairs out of his chest, you know.
Didn't Frank Fraser, when you did him, didn't he almost suffocate?
Well, I said to Mad Frank, because I had him sat in a chair. I actually got a dentist chair for the occasion, you know, because he was allegedly known as the dentist for ripping people's teeth out with pliers, but I think that was grossly exaggerated. But I had him in this chair, and I said to him, you know, if you get any problems breathing, because you've got straws up your nose, just put your hand up, you know, and I'll take it off. And so anyway, he sat there like that, and I'm working away. And I'm talking to him, and he's a bit deaf anyway, so by the time he's covered with plaster here, I figure he can't really hear me. And I'm looking at his knuckles, and I can see that his hands are trembling and his knuckles are white. I'm going, you're right, mate. And there's nothing, and I'm knocking on the plaster. You know, hello, and all of a sudden their hands are really shaking, and I thought, fucking hell, I better just pull this lot off. So luckily it set, you know, and I managed to get it off his head, and he's there gasping. And I said, what happened? He goes, I couldn't breathe. He said, I didn't realise, he said, because I've had my nose broken so many times. He said, I didn't realise that I can't properly breathe through my nose. So I said, well, what were you doing then? He says, I was holding my breath. And I said, well...
How long do you think it's...
Yeah. I said, but why didn't you put your hand up? And he went, oh, no, I couldn't do that. It's because he'd seen all the other guys that had done it.
Yeah, they hadn't done it,
and, you know, they hadn't freaked out in the process, so he had to go through it. And I just thought, there's a measure to man. What a fucking psycho. The mother of my kids washed his hair afterwards, and she said she felt tainted by him, you know. He had that 1,000-yard stare. I mean, he was another guy. He was incredibly funny, but really, 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 really dark. You know, I mean, very, very, very dark.
Was it after that exhibition that's you took Dave out to Brazil then to meet Ronnie?
Yeah, I think it was.
I've got to regret it. The one thing I really regret.
That you didn't go out there.
And David asked me to go at the time.
Right, yeah.
And I was working, and it was like, I just didn't want to.
Yeah, no,
and I really, from my heart, regretted it.
That's like a historical trip.
One of the biggest mistakes of my life.
That was something else. Yeah, Dave found out, it was all in the papers, wasn't it? There was going to be a big reunion. And there was this guy called Mad Max Carlish, documentary maker, and he found out that me and my dad was planning on going to Brazil for Ronnie's 70th birthday party. And he was angling to try to do a documentary on Alabama 3 at the time. But then he suddenly thought, hold on, he could do a documentary about Ronnie's, Ronnie's reunion with me dad on his birthday, and and then Roy Shaw was going to come out there, and it was going to be like a villains reunion. And so obviously Dave's like, I want to go, and everything like that. And so I introduced him to Max, as the Yellow Pages of Crime, and Max, because he's very entertaining, Dave, as you know. And he thought, yeah, this would be good, because the point is that we got Max to pay for all the tickets, obviously. And much to our delight, well, obviously, as soon as we turned up at the airport, Dave, one-man publicity machine, he had already alerted the papers. So there's a barrage of journalists in the airport as where they're, stuff like that. My old man wasn't too pleased. He was trying to keep it low key, and Dave's like, hey. And then we got upgraded, and we had Peter Mandelson sat in front of us with his toy boy, looking extremely nervous. And he actually found out, he launched an inquiry into who had upgraded us and tried to get the guy fired.
Wow.
Miserable fucking and then we got a phone call, and Max said it was offered 30k for a photo of Mandelson with his boyfriend, and Ronnie turned round and said, that's disgusting behaviour, persecuting a man for his sexual tastes. He said, there's no way if you stay in here I'm going to let you guys do that. So it shows you that he was a man of morals.
Biggsy, yeah.
Yeah. It was. But anyway, he was over the moon, obviously. I mean, because Dave had grown up watching Biggs take the piss out of the establishment.
They was his heroes, yeah.
But nobody like Ron, there's no other villain in history who basically waved the Union Jack with one hand and did a V's up. He was living the so-called dream of the SKP, lording it up, and Dave, I think, took a big leaf out of that book. Dave's the only other guy I can think of who kind of took the piss out of being associated with villainy and made it like
a career.
But like a cartoon as well. Yeah. Just totally over the top.
Parody.
I mean, who else turns up at a court case dressed as a jester? With his bail money, 20 grand in a
50.
50 grand in a paper bag. I mean, run for mayor, but your worst nightmare. I mean, he was.
Did your dad get to like him after a while?
I don't think my dad never didn't like him. No. My dad was just very wary about who he associated himself with, because he didn't want to be thrown in with that kind of lot like the papers tend to do. So even though he was mates of the Krays, he didn't want to be known as an associate of the Krays. Mm-hmm. He saw himself as something completely different, and no, he liked Dave. He thought Dave was funny and entertaining. They spent a fair amount of time together.
They spent a lot of time together, and Dave used to love listening to your dad and just hearing him talk. But he got a real buzz out of speaking to Bruce, and it was Bruce's insight into his whole criminal mind of life that Dave was so overwhelmed with at times. You know what I mean? He would actually come back to me and go, Bruce Reynolds, what a man to talk to. Do you know what I mean? He was like, I don't know, I think it was just, he was in awe of him anyway, because of his status. And because, listen, anyone from our generation looked at the Great Train Robbery, they was heroes to all of us. Do you know what I mean? I know what they done was wrong in the establishment side, but they were just working class heroes. Do you know what I mean? And Dave could not believe at times he was associating with him. He loved it, and Bruce was so down to earth and gave you genuine advice. I remember.
Yeah. Oh,
we went to
sure.
Copenhagen with your dad for a crime conference.
That's right.
For me to be with Bruce Reynolds anywhere was quite an exciting thing for me, and he was so calm, your dad, when he spoke. He would always be calm. He'd always be chilled out. Do you know what I mean? And he'd get his point across, and he was always sort of letting you know that it don't work a lot of the time. Do you know what I mean? He was quite adamant in.
Well, he was very kind of warts and all about it. Whereas, I mean, the thing is that he'd lived the life, and when he was in prison for the train robbery, he did 10.5 years. He read a lot, and he really got into philosophy, and he had a good look at himself and, you know, and everyone around him, and thought, what is this all about? And at the end of the day, you know, the only villains who get away with it are the ones you never hear about.
Of course, yeah.
And,
Most of them are in government.
Yeah.
He did say to me once that somebody did get away with the Great Train Robbery.
3 people got away with it.
Right.
2 of them gave half their money back to be dropped from the investigation, but you know, that's another story. But the thing about Dave was playing a character, you know, the naughty boy. He was almost like a kind of vaudeville villain, but he was very, very shrewd, you know, and he was fucking funny as he was so. You know, he
wasn't entertaining.
He could have, you know, he's one of the funniest guys I've ever come across. I don't know anyone. Okay, Howard Mark. I mean, my dad is very entertaining, but he couldn't like turn on an audience like Dave could. Howard Marks could, you know. He was a one-man phenomenon with his talks and his shows.
But he was the one who inspired Dave to do the talks, Howard Marks.
But Dave was absolutely brilliant, and he could have anything he turned his head to. He was very shrewd, Dave. He played the fool, but there was a lot going on there. You know, I think his intellect is very much underrated, and what he did is remarkable. Really, he pulled himself out of nowhere. And he managed to turn himself into a bit of a legend in the 90s. Yeah. You know, apart from, you know, even if they might have all been a bit B-movie, what he did about 5 or 6 films. His parties here were legendary. I mean, the life that he had, he did what he wanted to do. How about when he went to Cannes, and there was he had one of his movies out in Cannes he was promoted.
Yeah. And
there was this guy who had this really nice Harley Davidson. It was worth an absolute bomb, and he's
got 38 grand.
Yeah,
it was custom built.
Custom built.
I'll tell you how he got that, Nick. It was raining one day when they were filming down in Portsmouth, so they ended up going to Dockgate 17 or something. I can't remember the number, but there's a Harley Davidson place there. So Dave went in there. It's only because it was raining and he was looking about. The guy had heard about the film and he went, "Dave, you want one of the bikes for the film? Is that what it is?" And Dave straight away, you know Dave, he went, yeah. Right. And he went, "Oh, any one you want, Dave. If you're going to put it in the movie, I can see how big it's going to be. Yeah. Just take any one you want." And he went, "Well, I want that one over there." And he went, "Oh, Dave, I've sold that one." Yeah. He went, "It's been custom built for a customer." He went, "I've sold it." He went, "Well, that's the only one I'd have really had in it." He went, "He said, let me ring him and see if he'll do it." So
have it on loan.
Yeah, he rang the guy, and the guy was really cool, and he was a fan of Dave's anyway, and the Dave having it in the film really buzzed it for him. So what Dave done is he went, "For giving me that bike, I will pay for you and your son to come to Cannes for 3 or 4 days, I think it was." Yeah. So we put the motorbike in the back of a van, drove that out.
Drove it out there,
and then Dave kept driving up and down the front on the bike
brilliant.
to show off, to get attention
So
to
he's
the
posing, you know, like,
know.
who's this guy? Who's this guy? Easy rider.
Yeah,
He's all
brilliant.
blinged out in white, you know, looking like a cross between James Bond and Van Diesel. You know, like, look at me, look at me.
But what was really funny was we had the transit van out there, right, which could have doubled up as a little bit of a passion wagon.
I don't know.
Dave,
Fuck him.
Dave ended up with this lady one night, and I'm sitting in this restaurant bar about 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and he's pulled up on the bike, got off, and obviously headed off to the mobile hotel and gone in. But I'm thinking about 3 or 4 minutes later, I heard the bike start up, but I had my back to the window, and I thought, fucking hell, he's a bit quick on that one. So anyway, about 20 minutes later, Dave's coming all sweating, and obviously the girl looked a bit dishevelled, you know what I mean? And I said, Dave, did you just get on the bike a minute ago? He went, no. I went, oh dear.
Oh dear.
And we looked over and I said, it's gone, isn't it? And the guy who owned the bike, he wanted to take the bike home when he was going. But Dave went, oh, please leave it here. We're here for 10 days. He went, I promise I'll look after it. I promise everything will be all right. Don't worry. So the guy went, okay, Dave, I'll promise to leave it here. I'll let you have it. But he went, promise me you'll look after it. He went, don't worry. He said, that'd be perfect. So the following day, after he's gone home, I've had to ring him at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I went, all right, it's Brendan. He went, oh,
he got you to do it?
Yeah. He said, don't tell me. He said, has Dave had an accident? I went, no, Dave's fine. But someone stole the bike. And he went, very funny. You got me there. I went, no, I'm serious. I need the registration to give to the police. And he went, what? I said, someone has stole it. And what it was, at the end of Cannes, they have a Harley Davidson convention. And every year, these gangs turn up. And there's Harleys come from all over Europe, because it's Cannes, it's a big one. And these professional gangs go round just stealing the motorbikes, and they put them in a big, you know, the big Mercedes, big high vans. They put them in that, straight into Italy with them, and they're gone.
Did he ever get it back?
They never got it back, but the following day, Dave went to on the press conference where they were asking him about the film, and he said, look, he said, some has nicked my bike, and I'm offering 5,000 francs, which concerned me, because I thought, oh no,
You're going to front that.
5,000, Dave, fucking hell. 5,000 francs, he said, and if I find the geezer, I'll cut his fucking hands off, right? So what that paper was the equivalent of the French Sun. So the headline is English gangster threatens to cut bike thief's hands off or whatever, right? Which is great, bit of publicity, you know what I mean? And everyone's getting the idea and all that. But the poor guy in England who's now lost his bike, he then says to the insurance company, my bike's been stolen. And where was it stolen? From my garage. Because he hadn't got insurance to take it abroad. So he went, it's been stolen out of my house. Someone's got in and took it. They went, okay. So about a week later, the police and the insurance assessor come round and they go, is this your bike? And it's on the front page of the French newspaper with Dave's headline. And he went, is that the bike? And he went, yeah. And he said, but you said it was in your garage. He went, they said, so it's obviously a misunderstanding. You're not claiming for it now, are you? And he went, no.
So he lost it.
He lost his bike, and we ended up, I say we in a loose term, we ended up paying him, I think, 17, 18 grand towards the loss of the bike.
Oh, you did give him something?
We did, we paid him. I think he lost 10 or 12 grand, but we kept going him a grand, 1,500 quid, 500. So Dave did feel really bad about it. Do you know what I mean? And as soon as we got a bit of money in off anything, if Dave had money off other things, you know, Dave was very, very bad with money, Nick. If
tell me about
if Virgin give him 40 grand,
it'd be gone in 3 days.
Yeah, it would just be, give him 5 grand, we'll have that, give him that. Like. So, but what he did do, every time he'd done a show or got a decent bit of money, he'd go and say to him, here's 1,500 quid. He felt really bad about it.